Well, that did not take very long. I know there's a ton of excitement right now going around the new hero, but it seems amongst all of this hype, people have missed the fact that Bastion got nerfed. Only after a couple of days on the live servers with his recent changes, and seemingly the entire community in an uproar, they've decided to swiftly make some changes to Bastion. Those have gone through on the PTR, and they'll likely be coming through when the new hero goes live as well. So, let's talk about what got changed. It was only one change. It was a pretty simple change, and I think this is the one that everyone was expecting. Ironclad. Bastion now takes 20% less damage while in Sentry or Tank form, formerly 35%. So this is a nerf of 15% of the damage mitigation that he was getting in Sentry and Tank, and that was really the biggest point of contention for a lot of people. The sheer amount of things and damage that he could survive through was not just due to his healing, but his healing in conjunction with his armor and that extra mitigation from Ironclad. So now with that nerfed, his tankiness while in Sentry and Tank form will be decreased by a bit. Everything else about him is still the same though. What's interesting most about this though is that just prior to this patch going live and these changes happening to Bastion, Jeff Kaplan actually came out to talk a bit about this situation and overall kind of the difficulty of balancing in Overwatch or any game for that matter. Generally, what he was saying is that he appreciated the feedback on Bastion and what his effect has been on the current meta. He talked about how the perception that the community has of the meta can also be far different from what the reality is. And as an example, he pointed out the fact that for a long time, most of the community has claimed that Mercy is a dead hero, she's never picked, she's worthless. Whereas in reality, Mercy was the 5th most played hero overall. And he wasn't talking about quick play or arcade, he was talking about competitive. In competitive, when everyone was talking about on the forums and on Reddit how Mercy was dead, she was the 5th most played hero overall in all of competitive. So that tells you something. And yes, you might say, well, Force, that's just talking about like silver and gold and platinum. And while that may be the case, that's still just as important a part of the community and the competitive side of this game as the people who are playing in Grandmasters. We can't discount the experience of players just because they're not playing at the highest level of play. That's stupid. They're still players, they're still part of the community, and they still paid for their game. So their experience matters just as much as the Seagulls of the world, as the Thymus of the world. He also talked about how balance is tough. And on one hand, people complain when heroes are never played, like Bastion was for a long time, like Symmetra was for a long time, but then they have to make these changes to make those heroes viable, and then all of a sudden people start seeing them in their games much more often, and they complain as a result. Of course, there's a fine line between making a hero viable and making him overpowered, and that's the line that Blizzard has to straddle and try to figure out the best place when they do make sweeping changes, like they did for Symmetra and like they just recently have done for Bastion. And he wrapped all of it up by saying that he has been playing quite a bit of Bastion and playing against Bastion recently, and he agreed that he's a little too strong and they need to make some changes specifically to his survivability. So overall, he agreed that the current form of Bastion was too much, and that's why they have gone ahead and made these changes to Ironclad. Now, I'll be interested to see if the community then feels that this is enough, or I guess more keenly, I'm interested to see if people just kind of forget about it, because again, we've got the hype of a brand new hero now. I guess the question is, was Bastion really that bad? As Jeff said, the community perception of how heroes are can vary wildly from the actuality of the situation. The best example, as mentioned, was Mercy. The fact that people talk about how Mercy is a trash tier hero, she was never played, but even in competitive, she was the 5th most picked hero. Like, sure, she wasn't the 5th most picked hero in tournaments or in Masters and Grandmasters League, but just because she isn't there at the top, that doesn't mean that she's not being played by a huge portion of the player base. It's really interesting, and I think it also drives home the fact that these communities that we're looking to kind of have discussion about the game, the official forums, Reddits, fan sites, hell, YouTube pages, and Twitch chats, they're all heavily biased. A lot of the time, they focus on the top tier of play and don't necessarily account for maybe the vast majority of the player base's experiences. And as we've talked about, just because things are one way at the top flop, that doesn't mean that that's what we should focus on if a majority of the player base is experiencing something quite different. Bastion was certainly overtuned. I would at no point deny that. I'm glad they're taking the incremental approach by doing a small tweak. They're just focusing on Ironclad right now. They're nerfing it just slightly. They didn't reduce his healing or anything like that, and they haven't changed any other part of his kit. I will be happy if they do this and make these incremental changes so that Bastion can still be in a spot where he is playable on a consistent basis and your team isn't gonna bitch at you for picking him, but he doesn't feel oppressive to a lot of people, even if it is just that small echo chamber of Reddit, of forums, of YouTube comments, wherever. I mean, let's admit that that's what those places are. Either way though, I am certainly happy to see that they've made some adjustments. He could probably use a little bit more tweaking in the nerf direction, but overall, I'm just happy to see Bastion as considered viable nowadays, and I hope he stays that way, even after he gets hit with a nerf stick a couple of times. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for me here today. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, I wanna know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section below. Hope you all have a good one, and until next time, I'll see you later.